organizational wise, please drop the details down in the chat box. Wendy, hi to you. Paul, hi to you. So yeah, good to hear from you all. So we'll give it to a couple of minutes past, and then we'll kick in. I'll just wait for the clock to tick round to 2 minutes past, because I think that's probably a fair amount of time to give people to join us. Right, 2 minutes past 12. I think, in fairness to all of us that are here, we ought to kick in. So very good afternoon to you. I'm Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association, and also Chief Executive of Constructing Excellence in the Southwest and the Midlands. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar today. I'm joined in terms of hosting it by the rest of my CE family, as you can see from the slide, and also the CIOB. So about 10 organizations bringing you these weekly webinars now, which is great news. Now, today, I'm delighted to say we're joined by actually a young lady, Trudy Sully, that I was with last night. We were at the CE West Midlands Awards, along with about 300 other people at Edgbaston. I think, Trudy, a good time was had by all. So it's probably remarkable that we're both here wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. So that's I think, congratulations. I did manage to chip my tooth, you'll probably notice, last night. How I did it, I don't know. So that's a bit of a question mark over my behavior at the end of the night, but there we are. Anyway, today it's back to the real stuff, an introduction to the product platform Rulebook, which Trudy's going to take us through in a moment. But before that, introduce Howard, who you all know. He'll take us through the rules and regs for today, and also through a survey question. So over to you, Howard. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon to everyone. We're going to be using Slido. For those of you who are regular, you'll know how to get onto it. But for those who are not, two things: you can go to your QR reader and you can install it that way, or you can join us at slido.com. We're going to be using it for a poll, which is up on the screen. We're going to be using it for any questions and answers. So if you have questions for Trudy, please put those into the Q&A, which you'll find in Slido. And at the end, we're going to be asking you for feedback. We're going to do this right at the end. So we'd really welcome your feedback on today. So let's get into it. So where are you on your platform journey? Some of you have already started to give us a view. So you have a choice here. It is one question that you can choose. So the first choice is, you know nothing, enlighten me. I'm aware but unconvinced. I'm aware and totally up for this. We're developing one but not deployed yet. Or we have a product platform that is being deployed on projects. So I can remind you, one choice, 8 people, 9 now. Let's see if we can get it up to double digits, and then we'll start to run through the answers. So I'm going to run through the answers with you, along with Trudy, who will, I know, be fascinated to hear. So you can carry on answering it as the questions go, and as you'll see, if anyone answers it, and you'll see something changing. So Abraham, let's put up the answers. Oh, great. I know nothing, enlighten me. So Trudy, they're all here to be enlightened. I'm aware and totally up for this, and we have a product platform that is being deployed. So that's the top 3. Interestingly, no one's unconvinced, and nor is anyone developing one. So
that's okay. That's quite a nice position, because it's good to know that there's people here that are interested to learn about it, and perhaps then go on that journey. Well, the fact that there's nobody that's unconvinced hopefully means I'm preaching to the converted and we can have a very pleasant conversation.
Great. And don't forget, because you're here to be enlightened, if you have any questions, don't be frightened about putting them into the Q&A. If you don't want to own it, you can put it in anonymously, but if you'd like to own it, you can put your name in. So many thanks. I'm now going to hand over to Trudy, and I'm here to be enlightened.
Thank you, Howard. Right, so I should just bring my screen up. Oh, just wait for there we go. Right, hopefully that's visible now. I'm sure somebody will shout at me in a minute if not. So first off, thank you very much for the invitation today. We are doing the rounds at the moment, I suppose you'd say, because we have just launched the Rulebook, which is the latest release from the Construction Innovation Hub. And it's actually a great opportunity to start talking about it and start the engagement with the wider audience. We've had so many people involved, but actually the audience here, the position that they've just responded to on that questionnaire is great, because that means I can get a real quick hit win in terms of feedback from you guys about how it comes across and how it might sort of reflect on your businesses and what you want to do going forward. So please don't be shy in asking questions. If they're very technical, I will likely defer them and come back to you. I am not the technical brains behind this at all, but very happy any questions, and I will get answers for you if I can't answer them myself. So I'm Trudy Sully. I'm an Impact Director for the Construction Innovation Hub, and I'm just going to do a little bit of background first, especially considering that those sort of answers to questions, just to set the scene so you understand what I'm talking about in terms of what the Rulebook is and where it's come from. So the Construction Innovation Hub is a 4-year, partly government-funded programme, and we are here to support and work with the construction industry and with government to drive adoption of new manufacturing and digital approaches to really help improve delivery, resilience, performance, productivity, and basically help development and adoption of tools that can enable the industry to achieve those ambitions and those targets for the future. So there are 3 core partners to the hub: BRE, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the Centre for Digital Built Bristol, which was at University of Cambridge, and the Manufacturing Technology Centre. So they formed the collaboration to start this off and have managed the grant funding coming from government, which was to the tune of 75 million. But the most crucial element of this programme is the fact that we've engaged with in excess of 300 industry partners, and they go from your global giants down to micro SMEs and everything in between. And that's been critical, because that has been the industry developing these tools for the industry. The other key partner is our government departments. So both those that procure infrastructure and those that support it. So from Treasury, Cabinet Office, BEIS, IPA, Department for Education, Justice, Defence, MHCLG, DLUC now, and so on. So it really is a massive collaboration. And in terms of what we're actually doing, there's sort of 3 target areas that the hub has worked in. Influencing and shaping things like policy, regulation and standards. So we've been involved with the development of the construction playbook, the TIP roadmap, and what they are doing in terms of policy is what we are responding to in terms of the projects we've been working on to help industry to meet the expectations of the demand from government in terms of procurement of social infrastructure. And then, because of that approach, we've developed technical solutions and market-ready tools to actually enable you to do that. And of course, there's about enabling the market as well. So capability and capacity to be able to deliver these new approaches. And sometimes that's a bit chicken and egg in terms of the requirements and the demand and policy and the market being able to respond with confidence. And that's part of where we try and de-risk those changes for industry to move forward. Three major project areas within the programme. The Value Toolkit, I'm sure many of you heard about, that is gone through its beta testing now. So it's ahead of the platform side that I'm going to speak about in more detail. And it will be going live in the next few months. It's had really robust testing, again, a broad range of industry engagement and developing it and refining it and testing it and breaking it and making it. And that is about helping those value-based decisions that result in us delivering better infrastructure for the economy, society, and the environment. So a driver, a real tool to make better decisions. Information management, we all know data, digital information is the center of everything now. So there's a massive range of tools that have been developed around about getting the right information to the right people at the right time, and this being whole life with continuous improvement feedback. And everything we're doing is about building and making it better as we go forward. And then the platform program, which is about these manufacturing solutions for the market. And that's what I'm going to go into more detail on. Briefly, these will be familiar to you. I've just popped this slide in because the momentum that has been building and the policy and the direction and the guidance that has come from government over the recent years is really enabling this work to happen, and is, we hope, and the intent is enabling the market to respond. So we talk about demand from government in terms of pipeline. We know we've got the £650 billion national infrastructure pipeline. We want that to be aligned to what the market can deliver more effectively. So producing confidence on both sides. So in terms of the work we did about developing these manufacturing approaches and the product platform rulebook, we needed to look at that demand side actually and see what the opportunity was, because when you introduce manufacturing approaches, you need to look at that demand pipeline and the opportunity for scale, because that's where the real benefits come from. So we reviewed a £50 billion pipeline over a period of 5 years from 5 departments. And across that, we got some really interesting facts. We looked at what current specifications and requirements were and what that demand looked like. And these are some of the headlines, if you like. So 35 billion of that 50 billion, that's around 70%, have common spans in terms of the structural system. So already there at that sort of large scale, there's that opportunity for some commonality and potential standardization. We looked at 13 billion, so it's about 26, 27% of it was actually had so much commonality in terms of the requirements that a similar system might be able to deliver to that kind of scale. So when we talk about the product platform shortly, that's sort of the scale of things to be borne in mind. Greater than 50% of spaces are actually not department specific. So again, when you look at cross-departmental opportunities for the market to respond to, it's a very significant proportion. So although hospitals and schools and houses have unique requirements, there's a vast amount of commonality in terms of the structure that could be done to deliver them. 38% residential, so a very high proportion, not just in housing, but support accommodation across other departments. So there's that commonality there, but one of the challenges is that at the moment there's a vast difference in terms of things like terminology, specifications, and detail levels. So the real showcase number in terms of that is that across those 5 departments, within their current specifications and requirements, there's 104 different ways to name a toilet. So, or a toilet space, not just the toilet itself. So commonality of definitions and terminology is really important, because the more harmonisation is the key word we can get in terms of the specifications from departments, the better the market can respond in terms of standardisation and commonality of products. So this was a look forward. There's actually a report coming out very imminently from Akerlof, who are one of our partners on the product platform, looking at historical data specifically in relation to healthcare. So I think that's going to be launched in 2 weeks' time. A massive amount of data that for anybody working in that market will be really interesting reflection of how you can break down and how you might develop your approach with more confidence. So onto the rulebook itself. So we launched this last week at UK Construction Week. We've had really positive response so far. And I'm just going to run through what it is and how it fits, just so you have that in your mind, and that might be something to help you go ahead and read it yourself and see how it might actually impact you, your company, or the people that you work with, perhaps. So the rulebook, it's been developed to actually address some of the challenges and the ambitions laid out in the construction playbook and the tip roadmap that I've already mentioned. And it's to enable the sector to be able to deliver social infrastructure, but it will also be relevant for the wider market. And it's through using a platform approach and offsite manufacturing methodologies. So it's there to support. It is not a toolkit as such. It is a guide, and it's something that will require ongoing evolution through deployment, and we will be building that into what happens next, and we'll come to that later. So it's about accelerating that learning, and these sort of three key words about educating, empowering, and enabling. So it's there for the industry to pick up and for the client to actually be aware of the fundamentals and the rules, so that they can look to procure with more confidence from this side of the market. And we'll go through some of those sections and the main headlines from it over the next slide. So first off, what is a product platform? So the term has been used quite a lot lately. It's probably like most terms and words when they come out being misused in some places. So we wanted to be clear about what we are talking about in relation to this rulebook and the recommendations in it. So we call it a product platform. And product is actually quite a contentious word, because a lot of the time we're talking about standardization of process and how process can actually really drive the change. So why do we bring in product? Well, that's about what you're developing here. And there are some core definitions which are gone into in more detail in the rulebook about these different levels and about the terminology. What we're talking about in terms of a product platform is a kit of parts. So that's not an unusual idea. That's being seen, and a lot of you will be familiar with that concept of the standardized components that are being configured to deliver infrastructure. But for us, it's not just the kit of parts, it's all of the associated production processes for those individual parts, the knowledge that goes with it, including sort of the people and the relationships that comes all together. So it's a much more holistic description of what we're doing. And that product platform needs to consist of these stable core, which is configured and combined with complementary components via defined interfaces. So that's where it enables a broader market to compete. So the defined interfaces are one thing, but then those complementary components can come from a wider range of organizations, but still fulfill the same fundamental needs. And some of the benefits there, and we all know about improving productivity, about the opportunities of scaling manufacturability, standardization of those processes again, and as I mentioned, economies of scale from manufacturing. So it's called Rulebook, and as such it does have some rules. So the team that worked on this really spent a lot of time trying to find the core essence of what a product platform needed to be. This isn't to try and constrain people, it's to try and ensure that there is that move towards commonality and that we develop the opportunity for harmonization. So these rules that we think are essential to developing a product platform are about deployability, so not being able to be used across multiple assets. So that means that you've got greater breadth of market and pipeline that you can respond to. Configurable to suit individual requirements. So again, different projects, different needs, different configurations, but using what comes in number 3, those common repeatable elements. So then you can get your production processes, your knowledge and those relationships built in, but deploy it multiple times in multiple different ways across multiple projects. The interfaces we've already mentioned, so that the product platform can provide that to the marketplace so that the market can respond and know how these components are going to come together. Quality, obvious, but we must have built-in quality and assurance methodologies to ensure that we are really capitalizing on the opportunity of doing things this way and reducing defects or any problems further along the line. Information data, we've been there already, and open. So we think that the best product platforms will be open so that multiple different parties can actually respond to them, and we can actually maximize the opportunity for the deployment across a wider range of programs. And another thing to mention actually here is that when we talk about a product platform, developing that in itself is one thing, but we're talking about doing it not at project level. It's about stepping further back away from it and looking at the opportunity for using it in multiple different environments, programs, portfolios, etc. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here. The slides, I'm more than happy to provide them, and of course all of this is in the rulebook and the rulebook summary. But it's important to actually reflect on the fact that a product platform there's multiple different sort of levels that you can work at and approaches, and it's very important that we bring this detail to it, because we don't want people to feel like if they're already on this journey that what they're doing is wrong. Or that it's purely about delivering an entire building. So we know there's lots of people that have come at this from different directions and different positions, and we want to make sure that everybody feels like they have an opportunity to follow the rest of the journey and maybe help them deliver something even more effective and even more productive by joining at different places. And indeed, you might develop a platform that is very different offering to somebody else. So the simplest way to describe these three approaches is outlined here. So output is potentially a part of an asset or a part of a building that can be delivered. So a system within a larger project. And an example of that is Tata, who have developed some structural frame systems and cassette systems for the seismic project. So it is a part of a wider approach and a wider platform. And there are multiple different companies already working in this area that can actually start to bring this into play. The integrated delivery side of things is more like seismic. And if you haven't heard of seismic, it's another program that was sponsored through the Transforming Construction Challenge. They've recently delivered a demonstrator building at BRE, and I'd encourage you to take a look at it. The case study is also in the rulebook. And that is a more turnkey, so more holistic approach to deliver a whole building, a whole asset. And then the affiliated delivery is perhaps something that is helping to drive the adoption of the approach overall. So it's much more integrated. The client is heavily involved with the product platform provider as well. So an example of that is the Gen Zero program, where DFE has supported and worked with partners in developing a system for delivering schools at net zero. And again, the case study in the book, and there is going to be a demonstrator set up. It was one done at COP26, and this one that's going to be at the manufacturing technology site in the coming months. Again, a lot of detail here. All I'm going to do is reflect on 3 stages. So after you get the overview, after you get a feel for what platforms are and the ethos around it, there's a very extensive section, very detailed section in there about the product platform development framework. So these are sort of the processes that the team have sort of extensively researched and brought together to show you the way that we think one would need to be developed. And it starts off with the strategy, and it starts off with a fundamental question: is actually a product platform the right thing to do? Is it the right way to go? And I think that's a great starting point, rather like the value toolkit is, do you actually need to build a building full stop? So start with the basics, actually determine where to play and how to win. And then you move into the planning. So if you've determined this is the right thing to do, then it's about defining the problem and the approach before designing. And then that third stage is the design itself. So developing the kit of parts. What are those interface requirements that multiple people can respond to? The production processes, so building in those manufacturing systems, the quality, the assurance, and a deployment manual. So we're also going to be releasing a deployment guide soon, which will actually show the way that we think all product platform providers would need to develop one so that their product platform can be deployed in a consistent fashion, following the right standards and the right approach to prove the best quality delivery. So that's the bulk of the rulebook. Then what we have at the end is 5 case studies of those that are on this journey or are starting to deliver buildings. Platform 2, which many of you will have heard of, from Bryden Wood, and that is now being deployed on a office building in London, which is in progress, being delivered by Landsec. And really proving out some of those manufacturing approaches and how it works on site. And what's really interesting with that one is they're getting some fantastic results from it, but they're also learning about the culture and the behaviours that also need to be adopted in terms of deployment using the industry now and how that needs to evolve. Seismic 2, which I referenced. About this, a couple of off-site manufacturers who have come together, decided on the commonality elements that they can do and developed their kit of parts. Gen Zero, about delivering those net zero schools. High Rise Solutions, which is with Mace and NG Bailey. So that's in terms of actually the MEP systems, the componentization and modularization of that. So some quite diverse examples just to demonstrate that this isn't a one-stop shop. There is not one platform. There are multiple different approaches to this, all of which are equally applicable and important. So what next? So the version we've released, we're calling it a beta version. We are testing the market. We think it's doing pretty well. We're getting some really great responses, but we need more people to actually really explore it, really challenge it, and come back to us and be involved in those sessions that we're holding in May and June. Then the formal first edition will be released before the sort of finish of the program in August, September, and the legacy and governance arrangements will be in place at that time. In terms of legacy and governance, we're looking at who is going to own this, and that might be a longer term strategy, whereas we're looking at custodians initially who will be helping to embed it, helping the market to respond to it, and ensuring that continuous improvement. So this is a live document. And of course, users, we want this to be used and abused, and we want the industry to continue to feedback on how it works for them, or how it doesn't work for them, obviously. The core principles of the rulebook is that it remains open, that it is truly collaborative still. We need people to actually give on this front so that we can embed that continuous improvement. And those expectations about how it should remain, so continually improved, active feedback mechanisms put in place to make it easy for people to respond to, periodic formal reviews so that it is updated, and utilisation ultimately is intended to help progressive harmonisation. So as these platforms are deployed, as projects being delivered and portfolios are starting to adopt the approach, we're going to get more and more information to be able to support those ambitions around harmonisation. And I just wanted to put in one from some of the initial reactions. Some of you, I'm sure, know Henry Mickelberg, and this was, I think, a really positive quote from somebody that is never backwards in coming forwards about his opinions on anything in this area. So credit where it's due. This beta is superb. The more I study it, the better it gets. It's absolutely not a business toolkit, but the way you've converted the high-level subjectivity and aspirations, such as in the playbook statements of intent, and converted these into product platform logic is remarkable. You've led the horse to water. If they can't drink it, i.e. produce their own strategies from the logic or don't understand it, then you can do no more. And I'm taking that as a big win. And that's the end for me. So hopefully there's still people here because I can't see them while I'm presenting.
Trudy, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Let's just see what's in the chat box first. I've got some comments in the chat box, which I'll go through with you now, Trudy, if I may. But just for everyone else, if you could refer to Slido, that would be really helpful. So, right, okay. Yeah, okay, this is a comment to me from Howard.
Hopefully it's not saying, couldn't hear most of that. Can you do it again?
No, basically he's telling me the results, because obviously this is very much aligned to that presentation. 49% scored their knowledge as 4 or lower out of 10. 72% 5 or lower. So I think we're hoping that sessions like this will improve those matters. So
yeah, and that's really important, because this is it's an evolving environment, and it's a concept that is new to a lot of people. So one of the things we've tried to do with the rule book is actually start with the fundamentals. I don't want to call them basics because I don't want to dim it down like that. It is about sort of the principles, what this is, where it's come from. How can these approaches that are adopted in other sectors, how have they been translated for the construction environment? I think it's important to reflect that other industries have a lot of these concepts, and we're not saying construction is the same as automotive or aerospace. It's not. It's got its own unique challenges and its own unique environment. But that's not to say that we can't learn lessons from elsewhere and convert it, translate it for application and benefit in this industry.
Okay. If you could stop sharing then, Trudy.
Sorry, I thought.
That's all right. Let's go to the Q&A. I think I've only got one question in the mix at the moment. So anyone else, ladies and gents, while I'm reading this and Trudy's answering it, if you've got any other questions, please do pose them now. You can read this as well as I, but there is in this considerable cultural change required by a sector that has been reluctant to change over the last 30 years and more, I would suggest. Why will this approach work now? There's the $64,000 question, Trudy, for you to get us underway.
It has to. That's possibly a bit too simplistic. Look, the fact is, some people won't change, and some people will continue and be absolutely fine doing the things the way that they've always done them. But we also know that the productivity of the sector is one of the lowest of the different industrial environments in the UK and around the world. It can be better, and we can deliver better quality, and we can deliver faster, we can be more effective. We know that because, again, referring to other sectors, they have gone through similar journeys. And if you don't want to have better performance, better productivity, better margins, then there's nothing that I can say or do to help. But there is opportunity here, and there is policy drivers from government. There is a huge pipeline of buildings that need to be delivered against, and there is ambition from government to set a mandate about this approach. So there's plenty of sticks and carrots, and it is therefore up to the market to respond. And there are those that are doing so. Like I said, we've worked with over 300 organizations on this journey. We have 40 sort of signed up partners within the platform program. We're consulting just on this rulebook with about 200 different organizations, all of whom want to see how they can move forward. So there's a good sector that are doing it. There are disruptors coming into the market. And I'd say to a certain extent, it's time to get on board, or, you know, put your money on where you are. That's your choice at this moment.
Yeah, no, I think you're preaching to the converted. The people in the room are here probably because they've got CE principles in their DNA. I've been at this agenda now for 24 years, since the Egan report. So I've got the scars, and you know, we have got stories of this type of initiative coming forward, like the Rethinking Construction report and so on. And they're not vastly different in content. There might be a change of emphasis, but the principles contained therein have always been the same, about a collaborative culture and integrated supply chains and so on. So I do understand this question being asked, because my experience, if I put my daytime hat on as a supply chain member, first of all in the concrete industry and now in the timber industry, you know, I would sit in a constructing excellence meeting in the morning where the captains of industry would bang the desk and agree with all this. And then I'd put my concrete or timber hat on in the afternoon, and I'd be beaten uphill and down dale by site agents and so on, and buyers who weren't behaving collaboratively or in integrated fashion. So I do get the, if you like, the cynicism, but like you, I'm an optimist. I think the planets are aligned at the moment for it to succeed. Not just for what you've talked about, but the two big agendas of our time, climate crisis and the building safety situation, are colliding. And I think this approach gives us the best solution.
I think the last couple of years that we have all gone through all sorts of things. The silver lining, because, you know, looking for them where you can, is that it has made all industries, but you know, construction has had to reflect on what we do and how we do it, and look to better ways. And you know, that we've actually seen considerable attitude change over this time about our future and how we work. And I think that's you know, that has actually, in a weird way, helped this conversation.
We've got I'll go to a couple more questions that have come in, Trudy, in a minute, but we've got Ellie George, who's posted a comment. We know Ellie well. She's very active within CE. She says she was going to post a similar question, as getting construction sector to change is like turning a bus in an alleyway. But agree that there are now some adopters who are getting on board. I think she means this time. Are those people companies who want to integrate and collaborate? Here's the question: Are those companies who want to integrate and collaborate going to lose their IP, or will they find themselves at the forefront of construction revolution? What do you think about that, Trudy?
No, it's first Elle to ask an awkward question or a controversial question, depending. I know Elle very well. I didn't prompt that at all. Thank you, Elle. So IP is a really difficult ground, to be honest. A lot of the time, when we're talking about things like developing manufacturing approaches and systems, IP is just not worth it, because, you know, it doesn't take that long for somebody else to figure it out, and they'll copy. The opportunity now is actually about developing those. So I mentioned one of the rules about open. The more open we are about being able to develop these systems and enable the market to respond now, the more successful we will be, the quicker. And yes, there will be elements of IP, and there is a fine line there, and there is a balance. But, you know, I think, I'm going to go there. Seismic is a great project, and they've developed a great system, but it's only a couple of companies, and they are now in a position of having to decide whether they keep it closed for themselves or whether they make it open and enable that system to be deployed across a much broader pipeline of opportunity. Now, the risk of keeping closed is that you don't actually enable the scale, you don't actually get enough of the projects, you don't get the opportunity. So to my mind, that is risky at the moment, and I'm not speculating at all about what's happened to Urban Splash yesterday, for those that have seen the news, but it's another massive, great big flag for the offsite sector and manufacturing processes, isn't it? And we have to be really robust in developing what we're doing now and ensure the survival and the growth of the market, not keep too many things to ourselves.
I think that's very wise words, Trudy. I mean, obviously, I'm dealing in offsite construction with my daytime job with the Structural Timber Association, and we've been sort of bemoaning the fact that everybody seems to be moving to sexy new MMC solutions, and there are actually well-established offsite solutions that have been around for years, i.e., timber frame. Putting my plug in now, and I think we need to be careful what we wish for in that respect. Before we go to the questions, Trudy, I've got an ex-colleague of mine, Ian Reeves, who was chairman of CE for many years, who's got his hand up. I wonder whether we could bring Ian into play, Howard or Abraham. Could we bring Ian in? If you want to put your camera on, Ian, we'll bring you in to speak. Is that possible, Howard? Abraham, please. We'll bring you. Here we go, Ian. Ian, if you unmute, we're in. The floor is yours, Ian. Good to see you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Well, I don't want to occupy too much of the time, but I was passionately interested to listen to what you have to say. I've been involved since I was an advisor to Sir Michael Latham's review, and then John Egan, and chaired Constructing Excellence, and again was a director of the Construction Industry Board and deputy chairman at one time. So you can take it that I am an enthusiast for all that you've done and all you're doing, and I think this is a brilliant piece of work. So let me start there.
Thank you.
What I would say is the culture of the industry. I've been in the industry now 60 years, and if anybody wants to discuss whether there's been a cultural change, I was the commercial director in charge of building Spaghetti Junction in 1966, and I can promise you the world is a different place to the Birmingham in 1966 when we had inflation at 2% a month, and all sorts of a national strike, a 3-day week, and all sorts of things. So we're in a different world today, and I hope people will be more optimistic than pessimistic about the change. The experience I think I've had would lead me to say that what we need is a client-led revolution. I think we concluded in the Construction Industry Board and in other forums that, like it or not, the people who can force change, lead change, are the clients.
Yeah.
And I hope that behind this now, we can put enough major clients who sign up to implementing and to operating in this way. And nothing, in my opinion, will change the industry more than a client-led revolution now, because you've got the critical mass with the tool books and the hub and all the things that you and the government have continued to invest in over this period of time. I think we're getting to a tipping point. But I think that tipping point requires now a critical mass of clients to insist on this is how business is going to be done in the future. And I won't take up any more time, but I'm delighted to see what you've done, and I'm delighted to think that the industry will continue to evolve.
Very wise words, Ian. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I think that's you are absolutely spot on, Ian. And I probably didn't emphasize it enough, but when we were developing the rule book, there's 3 key large phases: demand, develop, deploy. So the rule book is a lot about developing And then there's how it's actually deployed. Fine, but none of that works without the demand. And the demand is absolutely critical. And we know, I said the £650 billion pipeline. Yes, great, it's there, but the clients have to drive it. They have to come together and they have to commit to actually making that change possible for the market to respond to.
Yeah. To systematize in this way, we need predictability and continuity and volumes, and without increasing the misery of Urban Splash or anybody else, part of the reason that these companies have failed has been a lack of continuity of demand. You can't, the economics of factories do not work unless there is a throughput and a utilization factor. And that is why I think Legal and General went the way they did. And they've invested a great deal of money in a way, to be honest, which is yet to show them the returns. And hopefully the work you've done may be a part of the solution for Legal and General as well.
Thank you.
Yes, no, I agree, and it's you're right. It is that tipping point, and the work, the industry, I think are poised. We get so many companies that are in this position of like, we want to do this, but we have to have clear sight of what is coming to be able to invest. And again, factories do not survive unless they have throughput that they have confidence and clarity in.
Yeah. The pipeline, I agree, and is all important. Yeah. Thank you, Ian. We've got some questions on the screen, Trudy. The one at the top and the one at the bottom, we could probably put together. The first one is about providing an email address for feedback. Would you like to pop your email address, Trudy, in the chat box?
I would, but I can't see. Hang on. See if that shows me more. I can't see everybody.
Down at the bottom, there should be a chat box.
Yeah, no, I have that, but the only thing that's come up in there is Al's question.
Okay, can you not type it in?
I should be able to. Let me try that. I will actually put, she says, the Construction Innovation Hub one, because that's somebody is managing all inquiries. I'll put mine as well for now.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the fourth question, because if you go to the fourth question, Abraham, it was about providing a specific details of how to engage directly.
Feel free to come to me, and then we have people that are coordinating the consultation sessions. And if I can't help, like I said, I know somebody who does.
Okay. So we've got you in the chat box now, ladies and gents. If you want to make contact, please do so. Right, let's go to the questions then, Abraham, please, if we may. Can we do them one at a time? So, having manufactured the Gen Zero demonstrator, I can wholeheartedly endorse this platform approach. Any further detail on visiting the prototype once in England?
No, but I believe that it's going to be set up within the next month or so. And I am sure that at that time, the MTC, so the MTC is always very active in terms of tours and engagement with the wider industry anyway. So once it is there, then I'm sure that they will be making sure that it's accessible. Again, if that's of interest to people, contact me and I will put you in touch with the team that are managing it directly.
Okay, thanks. And of course, Gen Zero got a mention, didn't it, at the West Midlands Awards last night?
It did, yes.
Yep. What's the next question then, please? Would it be useful to eventually have a register of companies and products who follow a platform, product, stroke, process approach? Is that something you're thinking about, Trudy?
Yeah, so it's certainly one of the ideas that is being bandied about, sort of probably quite early on in the Hub program, and perhaps when we were actually a bit naive about what product platforms needed to be or how they needed to be developed. But I think there's still sort of this vision of the opportunity once systems are developed and once they've been proven to perhaps have this registration certification body, especially if perhaps harmonized standards start to be developed in relation to quality assurance testing and so on, specifically about this approach, then the opportunity to sort of have that all singing, all dancing, but not necessarily just a database of companies, but actually, I mean, there's sort of this idea about this, excuse the reference to them, but this Amazon for delivery. So you can actually say, you know, as a client, I want to deliver a school in this location. These are the requirements, and sort of the configuration capability is there to provide the details, which product platforms fit and which providers can deliver against it. So it's a bit further down the line, but I think that will be an evolving environment as well. And certainly once people start to have systems that are being deployed, then we want to be able to support them and bring it forward.
Okay. And the final question I think that I have at the moment, there's a couple more comments in the chat box that we'll come to in a minute. Collaboration is built upon and works on trust. History suggests that trust is low in the sector, e.g. the level of disputes. Should building trust come first? There's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that comes back kind of to the question about people willing to change and cultural change. Again, I think it's been interesting, really, just a sort of a relatively small level, working with the companies that have been working on the platform program itself, that come from competing organizations, and for them to start to trust each other and work together and share their experience and knowledge has been a critical part of doing this. So it does happen, but I'd say it was one of the biggest hurdles to overcome about how to continue to collaborate away from programs and projects, to be able to work together to overcome challenges that are shared for the benefit of everyone. And again, we know that reduces the cost of doing it. We know it improves the benefits for everyone, but it's a mindset change that needs to happen as well.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. So a couple of comments from the chat box. So Ellie George back in. She's agreeing with you, the need for a client-led approach, Ian, but without the manufacturers developing products that respond to the market need, the manufacturers won't survive. So there's a responsibility at the manufacturer's end as well, of course. Ellie's with Energy Sprong. They're trying to systemize industrialized retrofit approaches, and the housing, social housing landlords, she said, are sharing demand to support the development for offsite approaches to retrofit. And she believes the next step will be platform approaches using this rule book. So that's all good stuff to hear. Not surprised, because Ellie's one of the leading lights in that particular field. And Sam Hart,
the retrofit element is so important, and it's when we started this program 4 years ago, it was almost a bit of a sideline, and now it is front and center and absolutely applicable in the same way. And organizations like Energy Sprong and like the work that I was doing are really going to start to bring that conversation forward on that really crucial side as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I was up at COP26 with the CLC Construct Zero board, and the two big issues, one was retrofit coming out of Glasgow, and the other one was embodied carbon. Those were the two biggies. Sam Hart, talking of Scotland, thanks you, Trudy, and says keen to send our stakeholders in England across to see Gen Zero classroom in person. So
I think Sam's just missing it up in Scotland, aren't you, Sam?
So that's good. Now then, thank you very much. We've got a feedback survey which we'd like everyone to fill in. What we're going to do today is take you through it question by question, so that we get your response within the hour. So if you could go back to your Slido, slido.com, hashtag LM130522, and then answer the questions. This session held my interest. I'm going to do it as I go along. I was encouraged to participate, is the next one. If you could fill this in as we go along. Then the content was pertinent and relevant to my role. That's good. Next one then, what I learned will help in the role. Yeah. And then recommending this for others in terms of the recording, listen again. And then how do you think it could be improved? Not necessarily what Trudy's had to say, but the general format of what we're doing. We're having some questions back at home, as it were, about whether we should continue to do these weekly or whether we should move them to fortnightly or monthly. So I'd like your views on that, really, because as we now come back out into a face-to-face situation, is this weekly webinar still useful, still valuable, or would you prefer to see them less frequently? I'd like to get your views on that. This session held my interest. Are we back to the start again? I think we probably are. Yeah, we're back to the start again, Abraham. So if you could give me the next slide, that would be nice. Thank you very much. So if you could all fill in the slido.com, that would be good. So that's what we were doing today. Could I have up next week, Abraham, so I can talk about next week and my pro pass and that sort of thing? So this time next week, we're back on the timber agenda, timber and the circular economy. It's a webinar specifically for specifiers, and that's sustainable construction solutions with Charlie Law, who many of you would have listened to about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Very, very well recognized speaker in the world of sustainability, net zero, and so on, from TD UK. So that's next week. And this is your ability to get a CPD certificate for what we've heard today. You just have to create the account in My Pro Pass, and then one will be created for you. So please do go on to mypropass.co.uk and do that. Just leaves me now to thank Howard and Abraham, who provide the Leaders Meets webinars for us every week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Ellie thanks you and I, Trudy, but I'd like to say biggest thank you to you, Trudy, for giving up your valuable time to spend an hour with us today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise in this very important field. Time now, fast approaching 1 o'clock, for me to say have a great afternoon, a lovely weekend, and I will see you all again this time next week. Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.